The world is running on Linux. You see it everywhere, from running most online web servers, network management appliances, laptops, phones, and ironically, maybe even your toaster. But why is it that if your Android phone or Chromebook is running on Linux, that not everything that is Linux compatible works on it? Or why is it that you can't just run Android apps on your Linux desktop natively? What is stopping you exactly if it's all just Linux? In today's video, we are going to talk about on what Linux actually is, the differences between all of these different operating systems, and why you just can't run one application on one or the other. And let's get straight into it. What the online community, blog posts or similar consorts like myself refer to as Linux or the Linux operating system is a variety of different free and open source Linux distributions. What is a distribution? Well, Linux itself is only a kernel, the core of an operating system that controls and interacts with your hardware. But without anything to interact with the kernel, you won't really get far. A distribution is therefore a collection of various different programs, tools, and whatever else is needed to properly interact with your PC, like a shell that you can type commands into, text editors, and different desktop environments that make your Linux desktop into an actual operating system. The base for most Linux distributions is GNU, a more or less baseline operating system that comes with many of the tools that you typically associate with Linux, and why many insist on calling it GNU Linux or GNU plus Linux. Operating systems like Android and ChromeOS are not based on GNU, but only occasionally borrow some of its tools. Android, for example, just uses a heavy modified version of the Linux kernel and then adds its own tools on top of that. These tools are often open source, but with different licenses that you would typically see with regular Linux distros. And there are of course some proprietary parts in it as well, like Google and Play services for example. So while Android technically runs on Linux at its core, it doesn't really support any Linux programs, because those programs typically hook into applications that run on top of the Linux kernel, which Android just doesn't provide, and vice versa. ChromeOS then, an operating system that is often being described as a Linux distro, or at least a different form of it. It shares more architectural design philosophies, does integrate some tools into it that you would typically see on other Linux distros as well, and it can run Linux applications on it. Running those applications on ChromeOS is not natively though. What happens is that you actually set up a container with a tool called crostini, and it creates a Linux system based on the free and open source Debian. So if you want to install Steam on your Chromebook for example, then what actually happens is that it sets up an optimized Linux container besides ChromeOS that has access to your hardware similar like a virtual machine, but with a much smaller performance footprint. And on Android? Well, unfortunately, there isn't really a solution like crostini on Android, which is why you unfortunately can't run Linux applications on it. There have been some success stories with rooted devices, so basically unlocked phones. However, performance results are quite underwhelming. But what about the other way around then? Do Android or ChromeOS apps work on Linux? After all, the Linux community is full of talented developers that even manage to let Windows native games run faster on Linux running through a compatibility layer, which should take more of a performance hit than running it natively. Okay, so when it comes to ChromeOS apps, then it depends. Like the core use case of a Chromebook, which mostly runs in a browser, sure, browsing and progressive web apps are no issue. Crostini? Well, there is no need, because we're already on Linux. The file browser, system settings, like everything system related doesn't of course. But there is also no need really, since Linux does offer a complete enough alternative. Probably even more complete. When it comes to running Android apps on Linux however, Waydroid is what crostini is for ChromeOS. A containerized environment to run Android applications on Linux. It's faster than traditional emulators while still running a full Android system underneath. It seamlessly integrates into the Linux desktop instead of having an emulated window, and with some effort even supports clipboard and file integration. One caveat worth mentioning is that not every Linux distribution comes with the necessary patches out of the box. However, the documentation is quite good and it should be pretty easy to set up. Oh, and one more thing. Out of the box, it doesn't really come with Play Store support because of the proprietary software parts that I mentioned earlier. So you either need to rely on third-party stores, find the application files yourself, or jump through a bunch of hoops to get the actual Play Store on there. It's more meant for developers testing their applications rather than just running Android apps on Linux. So let's quickly sum everything up. While Linux operating systems, in the context of free and open source distributions, Android and ChromeOS share the same Linux kernel as their baseline, they often feature heavy modifications. They are also not built with the same tools that you might expect from a fully fledged Linux distro, which means that software from one operating system can't just run on the other without the use of containers. These containers are a lightweight and efficient way to provide all of the required tools to make apps developed for one OS run on another. However, you're still limited by some caveats, often caused by proprietary software, of course. And this is why, despite all of these different operating systems running on Linux, if you want the real Linux experience, you should definitely install an actual Linux distro, which will not only provide the best support for Linux applications, but also sometimes better gaming performance, better privacy, and of course the freedom to do with your system as you please. And that's where I'll leave it. So what do you think of all of this? Do you think that ChromeOS should integrate more Linux typical software so that it might actually become a true Linux distro? Do you think that Google should put more effort into making Android more compatible as well? Maybe even into a full desktop OS? Please let us know in the comment section down below. Before I end this video, I quickly wanted to mention that if you want to support the channel, make even better videos, then please feel free to check out our membership program, as well as our online shop, whereas each sale helps to support various open source projects. If you've liked this video, then please make sure to show it with a like, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any future Linux videos just like this one. I can't wait to see you the next time, but in the meantime, all that's left to say now is good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are. I'll see you around.